So we've basically been doing Charlotte Mason since year one. All my kids have been doing Charlotte Mason. And I started out kind of thinking, well, I was a teacher and I like to just do my own thing. And so I'm going to create my own lesson plans. I love making lesson plans. But then quickly, the more I read about Charlotte Mason, I thought, oh, I like that part, but I don't know if I need to do all this other stuff. And then I'd read another part and her reasoning for it and say, oh, actually, nature study is really important. And now I see why she does this. And so habit training was definitely one of those things that I, first of all, thought, I don't even know what that is. And then secondly, I'm not sure how much I'm going to use that. We'll just see. And then the more I read, the more I realized, oh, she really bases this on her observations of children and human nature and a biblical perspective. If you're a Christian, she really bases it on the Bible. So those truths don't go away. They don't change. It's not a fad. And so that's why I think a lot of people see what she wrote and say, oh, well, she was a Victorian. How does that apply today? And parenting trends change and education trends change. But she really based it on foundational truths that don't change, I don't think. And so I've enjoyed it, learning more. I don't do it perfectly. I thought I could come and just tell you all the things I don't do well in habit training, or I would like to do better. But it excites me as I'm reading through it that I can do this better, and we all can, if you understand why she laid it out there. It's not just for the sake of controlling your children's behavior. She was really adamant that children are born persons, and that Jesus respected children. In the Bible, he said, do not hinder the little children, bring the little children to me. Look, go and become like a child. And so how many of you don't have to raise your hand, but how many of you brushed your teeth this morning, right? Got dressed, took a shower. Thank you. Actually, we don't care if you brushed your teeth because we can't smell it. But if you have to go through your morning routine and think, when am I going to take my shower? When am I going to brush my teeth? When am I going to put on my deodorant? And you have to consciously think about each step in that process. It is really exhausting. And I don't know about you, but I forget the deodorant half the time if I have to think about it. So I've developed a routine. I've developed this schedule where I wake up in the morning without even consciously thinking about it. I jump in the shower, I brush my teeth, I wash my face, I put on my deodorant, I get dressed, I head out the door. And it is so nice and smooth to just have that routine, and I don't forget. I have been trying to I got out of the habit of flossing my teeth when I had babies and got so busy and was falling into bed at night. And I'm finally, this last couple weeks, saying, you know what, I have got to floss my teeth. And so I tied it to my habit of brushing my teeth at night. And I said, I told myself, I cannot brush my teeth until I floss them first. And I don't know how many of you are like me. If you go to bed and you haven't brushed your teeth, it's like, I can't handle it. I have to go back and brush my teeth again. It's that much of a habit that I cannot go to sleep unless my teeth are brushed. So tying the flossing to it, instead of saying, oh, well, maybe I will, maybe I won't, if I feel like it, or oops, I forgot. It's just tied to the teeth brushing now. And so that's the habit I'm working on. So this is a principle. If it's true for us, and we're people, we're persons, our children are persons, right? So it's true for them too. If you develop this habit, it makes for easy days for mom, but it also makes for easy days for kids. Charlotte Mason says having to consciously think about making your bed and brushing your teeth and doing your lessons and taking a shower and closing the door. All these little decisions just exhaust us. I mean, how much, again, as moms, if you have to think about doing the laundry, doing the dishes, making sure they get their hair brushed, making sure they get their teeth brushed. I don't know about you, I'm exhausted by the end of the day with all these things. And of course, I forgot to take the medication because I can only remember 2 things at a time. So the goal for us and for our kids is that the more it's a habit, a real habit, then you don't have to think about it. You just do it. So for example, laundry, I used to always be behind in laundry. But then I just developed the habit of when I wake up in the morning and I walk by the laundry room, I throw a load in. So every day I don't have to think about it. I just, on the way past the laundry room, I throw a load in, and now my day is so much easier because that's one load I don't have to think about. So Charlotte Mason says, sow an act, reap a habit. Sow a habit, reap a character. Sow a character, reap a destiny. And a great function of the education is to secure that acts shall be so regularly, purposefully, and methodically sown that the child shall reap the habits of the good life in thinking and doing with the minimum of conscious effort. So that would be my definition. Doing and thinking with minimum conscious effort. So she talks about habit training in home education. I know that's backwards, and then she also talks about it through a lot of her books. I have been reading Laying the Rails by Sonia Schaefer. She has a whole book series and workbooks to help with she compiled all of Charlotte Mason's habits into one place. So that's a great resource. But her 3 top habits that she wanted kids to learn were obedience, attention, and truthfulness. So I'm going to talk about some of those specifically. But the idea is she was way before her time in knowing that when you act, you're developing ruts in your brain, basically, or laying down rails. So the more you do an action, the more it becomes habit, the more it's actually changing the way your brain is working. And of course, now we know that to be true too through newer technology and brain scans, which is so amazing to me. And basically that it takes, I think she said 4 to 6 weeks to develop a habit. And I was just looking up again that the most modern research is saying 66 days on average to develop a habit. So sometimes we know, I want to start flossing my teeth, but we do it for a week and think I got a habit, and no, that you need to be doing it for probably 2 months to really develop a new habit. And that's where as moms, we sometimes again get a little bit too confident that the habit is developed. But let me walk you through developing a habit so you have an example. So my kids, and this is the one Charlotte Mason talked about, shutting doors. And some people thought that's kind of an outdated habit, but we have a door to the basement, and if the kids leave the door open, my crawling babies can fall down the stairs. So I sat them down and first of all, you have a talk, not in the midst of disciplining or when they're upset or you're upset, and say, here's the habit we need to work on. We really need to close the doors. We don't want flies to come in from outside. We don't want the babies to get into your Legos and choke on them. I really don't want the babies to fall down the stairs. That's such an important, explain to them why this is an important habit, but keep it short. Don't go on and on and on about it. And so I get them on my side. I tell them I'm on their side because that's really important. You want them to know I want you to develop this habit for you. And then we say, okay, we're going to develop this habit. I know it's not a habit right now, so I know it's going to be easy to forget, but I'm going to help you. And I'm not going to tell you every time to close the door because that's not, you got to think about the habit you want them to develop. So you do not want to develop the habit of them shutting the door when you tell them to shut the door, or putting their shoes in the basket by the front door when you tell them to put their shoes away, because you're developing the habit of obedience, which is great, but you want them to do it without even thinking about it. So you're going to tell them when you walk through a door, you're going to close it behind you. Or when you come inside, you're going to put your shoes right in this basket. And if you forget, at first I'm going to help you remember, but I'm just going to say, hey, Jack, I said I would remind you. Or, hey, Isaac, what do we do when we walk through the door? Go back to the door and see if you can remember what you're supposed to do. And it's really important, the tone. I know this is probably one of those things that when I first, how did she say it? She said it in such a funny way. Something about, you want the kids to always be in the sunshine of the mom's countenance, I think was pretty much the phrase she used when you're helping them develop a habit. And at first I thought, this woman did not have children, which she did not. But the more I thought about it and prayed about it, the more I really grasped that concept of, we are setting the atmosphere of our home. We are setting the tone. And so often I have to, first of all, pray about it and search my own heart especially when I'm seeing attitudes of negativity and being unkind. Usually I go to my kids first of all and say, I'm sorry, I have not been setting a tone of kindness. And so I try and change that. I'm working on it. But so again, yeah, with all of these, if you're going around saying, you forgot to shut the door again. I can't believe you forgot to clear your dishes. Why can't anybody pick up their shoes? That is not helpful. If my husband came and said, Brenda, why can't you floss your teeth? Yeah, I know that it's important as an adult, but someone coming around and nagging me and getting frustrated with me is not going to help build up the habit. So our children are persons. We are going to try and have a helpful tone be on their side, and it makes all the difference. It sounded impossible. In fact, actually, I said I'm going to work on this, and I did such a bad job the first while, and I had to go and pray and repent and pray and ask God to help me. But once I really realized the goal is to help them develop the habits for themselves, then it kind of helped. And thinking about how hard it is for me to develop a new habit. Okay, so back to the whole door thing. So I get them on board, I'd have a good attitude, and I have to be present when they're at the door as much as possible, because if I'm coming back 2 hours, 4 hours later and bringing them to the door, it's not connecting it right when the action is happening. So shoes was a great place for me to start, because we all came in the house together. So we were all right there where the shoes were supposed to go together. And then maybe at the first couple times I'd say, okay, remember we're working on this habit. Let's all go put our shoes in the basket together. And then the next time I would wait to see if they remembered. And if they didn't, they'd run off and I would say, wait, come back, your shoes, or come back. What did we forget? So that they remember to put the shoe, because sometimes they don't, and they have to sit there. And Sonia Schaefer in Laying the Rails says, don't tell them it's going to be so hard, but don't tell them, just say, what did you forget? And then she does the head nod, nodding at the thing with a good attitude until they actually, because then they have to sit there and think, what was I supposed to remember? And that's where you're training their brain to actually every time I come in, I put my shoes there, not wait until mom tells me. The same thing is with obedience. And I think we know this, but if we tell them 3 times to do something, you're just training them to do it on the 3rd time you ask. If you wait until you yell at them to actually expect them to go and do whatever you're asking, then you're just training them to wait until you yell at them, right? And I loved Charlotte Mason says about the closing the doors. She gives a whole little story about this boy who's trying to remember to close the doors, and he does such a good job for the first week that then he forgets one day, and his mom thinks, oh, Johnny's been doing such a good job, I'll just let him off this once. And he thinks about it later, oh, I forgot to close the door, but mom never called him back. So he realizes it doesn't matter. And he runs off, and she's just undone everything she's been working for. And then when she decides to do it again, she's going to have to start over. You have to start all over again with the habit. And really, you've just taught Johnny it doesn't matter. So consistency is the key. Kindness and consistency in habit training, I think, are the 2 most important aspects. Let's see. Okay, my morning routine, children are born persons, choices are exhausting, takes 66 days to form a habit. We've talked about picking up shoes, shutting doors. Those are kind of, again, you can see how easy that will make life for them and for us down the road. As a kid, I really wish people had helped me instill good habits, because so much I got into the habit of, oh, good enough, or doing things sporadically. And now I'm having to undo a lot of bad habits. So it's a kindness to your kids to help them develop good habits from the start. But it applies a lot to school. In fact, she said so much of education is habit training. Let's talk about attention, because that was one of her ones that she thought was most important. And I really see how this is the foundation for all of Charlotte Mason method of education. When you are doing lessons, she says, the reason we say keep them short is because if you sit down to do math and you let Johnny get distracted. Oh, he gets bored. He's not paying attention. The butterflies. What you're doing is you're developing the habit of inattention. Oh, because this is key. You are developing habits. Your kids are developing habits, whether you try or not. Everything, we are creatures of habit. So if you say, I'm just not going to do this, I don't care, you're still developing habits. So Johnny is developing a habit of not paying attention during math. Susie is developing the habit of putting her shoes wherever she wants. So which habits do you want your kids to have? Which ones will be the most helpful? So with schooling, it's so important to right from the start develop. She's like, as soon as you see them wandering, their attention wandering, close the book. Go on to something else. Maybe you'll come back to it that day. Maybe you'll come back to it tomorrow. But it's so much better to develop the habit of paying close attention for the whole 5-minute lesson. Or maybe to start with the 2-minute lesson. You could probably go 5 minutes. I don't know. But then you slowly draw it out longer and longer. And then for their whole life, they are learning to be attentive for the whole lesson rather than inattentive. And again, we are learning with lectures, you really in school settings, you tend to pay attention to the first 10 minutes and the last 10 minutes of a lecture, maybe, and then kind of don't digest anything else in the middle. So even as adults, we have a limited attention span and we can learn to expand ours, but it is much better not to go on and on and on. It's better to keep it short if you really want something to stick. And so same thing with when you're reading a lesson in a book, you only read it once because you want to develop that habit of having them pay attention, fully attention for the first time. And when I thought, I don't know if we'll do that, but I'll try it. And I read our lesson for the day and Bible, and the kids weren't paying attention. And so I said, okay, we're done, and we're not going to we're going on to the next thing. And my son, who's a rule follower, said, no, it's the most important. It's Bible. I missed it. Please read it again. And it was so hard for me, but I stuck with it. I said, no, I'm sorry. I need you to pay attention the first time I read it. And he fought it and had kind of a meltdown. And I said, you can read it again in your own time, but now it is time to pay attention to English, and I need you to pay attention to this story fully, and I'm only going to read it once, and if you miss out on hearing this story. And you can bet the next day everyone was paying attention during Bible reading and English reading because they knew they weren't going to get a second shot at that. So, what's better, to pay attention the first time or to know, oh, mom will just repeat it, so I don't really have to pay attention. That's a habit you're building, and you get to choose. So it takes a little bit of work up front with all these habits, but then you're laying the rails, and the train goes smoothly down the rails, and for the rest of their life they'll be attentive or know to obey on the first time they're asked, or just not trip over shoes because they'll go where they're supposed to. All right, I want to read a couple more quotes to you. I know I'm getting kind of short on time here. Back to the idea of kindness, I love Charlotte Mason holds us to this high standard. She says, we are ambassadors for God. And so you cannot be an arbitrary ruler. You cannot choose, today I care about the dishes, but tomorrow I don't, because it is not your choice. Kids have to learn to obey you. They have to learn to obey God. They have to learn to obey authorities. You can't just choose, well, today I care about it or not. How many times I have said, I'm just not in the mood for it today. And that is not okay. So she holds us to this standard of you need to be consistent every time. But she also gives us encouragement that God has given us the ability to follow through. He empowers us. So we need not add that authority is just and faithful in all matters of promise keeping. It is also considerate, and that's where the kindness comes in. And that is why a good mother is the best home ruler. She is in touch with the children, knows their unspoken schemes and half-formed desires, and where she cannot yield, she diverts. That's a big one. If you can divert, it's a helpful tool. She does not crush with a sledgehammer, an instrument of rule with which a child is somehow never very sympathetic. So I don't know, that one I just love, this idea that we do have mommy compassionate hearts, but it's not compassionate to be inconsistent. So always with kindness in your voice, in your goals, in what you're asking of them, but always consistent. And then also because you want kids to do it because it's right. So she says, it is said that children of parents who are most strict in exacting obedience often turn out ill. Exactly so, because in these cases there is no gradual training of the child in the habit of obedience, no gradual enlisting of his will on the side of sweet service and free will offering of submission to the highest law. The poor children are simply bullied into submission to the will, that is the willfulness of another, not at all for it is right, only because it is convenient. And so, again, I think what she's saying there is, first of all, only focus on one habit at a time. I think I forgot to mention that earlier. If you're trying to drink more water and floss and take your vitamins and exercise every day, it's not going to happen. You'll get frustrated. You need to focus on one habit for, I would say, 6 weeks. And at first I thought, how are we going to get through all the habits if we take 6 weeks to do each one? And I really need them to know all of these. But it would be better if you took 6 weeks. What would that be? That's about, or let's say 2 months for a habit. You really took 2 months for a habit. You would get 6 habits by the end of the year. But if those are habits that they have for a whole lifetime, you know, how much better would I be if I had 6 new habits at the end of this following year? So it would be better to have 6 true habits than none that are followed through on and actually fully developed in a child or in ourselves. Okay, anything else I need to say? I think of it as a delight, though. She really thought of it as a delight. You're giving them such a gift if they have habits that will last them throughout their whole life. And it's all tied together. Jen already shared the atmosphere. We are limited to 3 educational instruments: the atmosphere of the environment, the discipline of habit, and the presentation of living ideas. So if you develop an atmosphere where you're modeling a lot of these behaviors, that's huge. They will catch a lot of the behaviors. So do that heart check, make sure you're modeling kindness and obedience and those things. And then, you know, I have to go and apologize a lot when I'm not. Then make sure you're showing them, teaching them, and I tell them to get them part of the process. Here's how you develop habits. Mommy's developing habits. We're all working on this habit together. And then the examples is huge too. If you can give them examples in living books, in stories about George Washington being brave, about Abraham Lincoln being honest, about, you know, give them these living examples. Sometimes that helps them see it and it's not about them and they don't get defensive, but they want to model it. All right, I think that's 25 minutes. So there's still so much more I could share. I hope you look into it more. You can find lists online in her books, Laying Down the Rails. You can find lists of the habits. I will post a list of some of them in different categories. But are there any questions?
Oh, there, I can unmute myself. You should be able to unmute yourself in the top right. There's the mute and unmute, or you can raise your hand, or you can text in or type in the chat window. So it looks like there's a question. Do you have the chat window, Brenda?
Yes, atmosphere. Okay, the 3 things. Yes. Your instruments, 3 educational instruments: the atmosphere of environment, the discipline of habit, and the presentation of living ideas. Hi, Jen. Nice to see you. And some of the broader categories are decency and propriety habits, and a lot of those, she said, are more caught than taught. Mental habits, moral habits, physical habits, and religious habits. And she says, sometimes we think it's really hard for kids to do it. Oh, it's such an effort to remember to close the door. But she says, no, it's not any harder to close the door than not close the door. So don't think of it as an exertion, other than at first it'll take a little while to develop it, but really you're just making it smooth days for them.
I noticed that you apparently know Jen Hogan, and she's with my friend Andrea Miles. So that's kind of a small little world.
Yeah. I love Spokane and Idaho area.
Well, Andrea is originally from over in the Seattle area. She came to the cool area, but well, kind of. She's from here too, though. Right. She's over there shaking her head. She's got family over here too, and she lived here. Anyway, I digress. All right. So Shauna has posted something too. Oh, that's funny, Jen. Yeah. Shauna says, I love laying down the rails.
I appreciate that it's not sticker charts. Yes.
My husband keeps trying to do that. He was mentioning that the other day. We've got to do something with Benjamin. Maybe we need to get that sticker chart up again. And I was like, we don't have that. I don't even know where it is. But we bought it and we never used it because, yeah, there's so much better ways to do it. I just have to do it. It just takes work. But like she talks about, and one of the, I had to deal with some stuff with my mom, so I had to step away for a minute. But one of the comments that they talk about with child training is when you take the time to do this with your kids, it ensures smooth and easy days later, which smooth and easy days is hard to think about. But if you really think about it, it's like you put the effort in now and your kids will behave. But if you're constantly on them through over and over, then you're actually not building good habits. You're just, constantly on them. So it's worth it. It's just a lot of work. I think Brianna has a question.
Oh, another question?
Yeah, I think Brianna has one.
I was thinking how so often when I'm doing the reminders, remember to pick up your shoes, remember to do this, remember to do that. Also, if you're just talking all the time, they will tune you out. But if you don't have to remind them to do this and this and this, and they just do it, then when you actually have something to say, hey, I need you to do this, they'll listen, because again, they haven't gotten in the habit of tuning out mom because she never stops talking.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to try to answer Brianna's question, or I can.
Oh, I didn't see it. What was it?
I have 2 special needs kiddos that I'm going to be homeschooling. I'm curious how well following Charlotte Mason has worked for others in the past with special needs. There might be a few moms that can chime in this group with that. As I say, Heather, she can also chime in. You can unmute. All right. Can I unmute you, or you can probably unmute yourself?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, let's hope I don't start crying. Yeah, my daughter is. And I believe that Charlotte Mason is the best thing that has happened to us. And I actually am learning more about some other special needs and things that she's going through that were not previously diagnosed. I tried textbooks. She'd been in public school, and neither one of them worked. This is the only thing that we've been able to stay consistent with. I've tried doing some charts with incentives of things that she really enjoyed, and they would work for about a week or 2 and then fail. Recently, I was told by a doctor that she may have autism on top of other things that are going on with her. She is an only child, and I'm a single mom. And so it's been very challenging, but I believe that because of Charlotte Mason, my daughter will succeed in her education. Yes, she does get frustrated with some of the work, but because it's hard for her to understand a little bit, but we talk through it, and then she picks up on it really quickly. I like the flexibility of Charlotte Mason and Ambleside, and because it is more advanced, I was able to start her a little bit younger without her feeling like a failure, and she's doing really well with it, and she actually enjoys the education, and she likes the nature study, even if she may not show it sometimes. She really enjoys it because she gets to be outside, and that's where she's most at peace. She deals with major depression and anxiety, as well as ADHD and a whole lot of other things. And I believe that because of Charlotte Mason, I can help her not just with an education, but with her whole life, and that she'll be able to succeed. And I enjoy the fact that there are so many people here that have the same beliefs and that we can share with them and be involved with them, and that she knows that she's welcome by everyone and not judged for who she is. There are just so many aspects of Charlotte Mason that have helped her and I. It's just been a godsend for us, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Heather. That's awesome. It's very, like we were talking about, both Brenda and I are talking about, it's not, so Charlotte Mason isn't a checkbox system. It's not a open and go type thing. It's more of a lifestyle. It's a way of living. And so it's a way of bringing beauty into your home. It brings more peace into your home, and it gives you structure of just how to be a mom, how to be a wife, how to just be, you know, a child of God. And it's really neat. And so it's, you know, in some ways, if you're just starting out, this is kind of what we did with the year zero. So the little ones is just start reading good books, and they just start learning that way. And, you know, just start slowly and start adding stuff. You don't, when you start, which we'll get into more of this stuff later on, but you don't want to try to do everything at once. You just slowly start adding a few things into your family, into your days, and then it grows and it just becomes beautiful. So, you can make it work for your family. You can adjust. And there is, Ambleside Online has a forum for special needs families. So that's also a great resource you can go to for other families that are in your situation that you can get some tips from. So there's a broad spectrum of people that use the Charlotte Mason education. So there's a lot of resources out there. So and then real quick, because we got to move on to the next workshop, but Diana and Jessica commented about consistency. They struggle with consistency. Any pointers, Miss Brenda?
Yeah, I think what Jessica was saying about I have to train myself first. So working on being consistent myself is a huge thing. And then also proximity. Or putting sticky notes for a little bit at the beginning to remind myself that this is what we're working on. This is what we're focusing on. But I had a friend whose son was having a little bit of a trouble being kind to his siblings, and she wasn't around when it was happening, and you know, so that was the struggle. So how they solved that was, while we're working on this habit for 6 weeks, my son is glued to my side. He had to be with mom or dad all the time throughout the day so that they would catch it when it happened. And I mean, that seems really hard, and it was really hard, but she said it made such a difference. And so she didn't have to think about, oh yeah, I'm working on that. It wasn't over there somewhere. And when I'm working on them shutting the back door, I just plant myself at the back door for the whole day. So it's not another thing to remember. It's this close. But at the end of a few weeks, her son's attitude just completely changed because he was catching the positivity from his parents, and they were seeing every time an unkind word, you know, happen. So again, it does take a little bit of work up front, but once it's developed, it helps so much. And then you just go back and like balancing plates. You know how you're seeing the plate spinners? Sonia Schaefer talks about, you're focusing on this plate for right now, making it spin. But once that's balanced, you move on to the next one, and you only have to come back and spin the other ones occasionally, you know, keeping an eye on them. The ones you've already developed, spin them occasionally, but all your attention is on this one.
That's good. Awesome. Thank you, Miss Brenda.